I always say in my class, like, ordinary people can do extraordinary things,
Hmm.
which is, how we use innovation and stuff to make change in healthcare. So I feel like we're pretty ordinary people trying to do something extraordinary. And,
Hmm.
along with great help from Maggie, Kayla, and the whole team and everyone who supports us. But I think it really is that we've seen over and over people from communities all over the world be able to take this and spread it. And that's what we're trying to do. Hi, I'm Cian Xiao.
And I'm Sammy Winemaker. We talk about ways to put the human back at the center of care.
The Waiting Room Revolution starts right now.
Welcome back. It's Sammy and Cian, and this is the beginning of season 10 of our podcast.
The Waiting Room Revolution. We're back. We're excited. We're going to take a chance in this season to reflect back on our journey so far since 2021. So we've been at this for 4 years, 10 seasons in, and I think it's a really great opportunity to look back at some of our successes, the things we've learned, how the revolution has evolved, and where it's going. And I think it's a real, in a way, a thank you to everyone who's helped us get to this point and who's joined our movement and our global movement, really. So I'm really excited.
Me too.
So, to help us with this season, we are bringing in two special members of my research team. They have
Mhm.
roles in the waiting room revolution. Kayla McMillan, who, yeah, hi, Kayla. She is the producer of our podcast, of every episode, the music, the logo, all of the stuff. So, we're really excited to have her be one of the interviewers for the season. And also Maggie Sivak. Hi, Maggie.
Hi.
Maggie is the main coordinator for all our events over the past 4 years. So the two of them have probably heard us talk about the waiting room revolution more than almost anyone that I can think of. So I'm really excited to have them be our hosts and interviewers for the season, moderators, and are going to take this journey along with us. So welcome.
Mhm.
Thanks for
Thank you, you
having
two, for
us.
everything.
Yeah, we wouldn't have gotten to this point without you two, that's for sure.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to turn over the questioning to the two of you, which is a different role for us, and we're going to be in the hot seat for the rest of the season. So Kayla, Maggie, take it away.
Okay. So to get started, we want to start at the beginning. So you launched the Waiting Room Revolution and the Seven Keys. You said 4 years ago, which is exciting. You started the podcast. I remember when we first started recording, you were recording in the closets in your house. Did you ever think that it would take off the way that it did?
Okay, I'll answer that. That's a hard no. Absolutely not. Uh, I didn't even know what a podcast was. As I emailed people, that's about as technical as I got. And so when CN had this idea with you guys to start a podcast, there was no way I thought it was going to fly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we believed in the keys and we wanted a medium, but I never thought anyone would listen. And in a way, when we first started, if you remember, Sammy, I was in email jail because I had to email everyone that I knew to be, please listen, and our numbers were going up
Hmm.
slowly. But year over year, episode over episode, our listeners increase, and it's really incredible to see how far it has spread internationally, and just to build this community or to feel a part, feel connected to people doing
Hmm.
similar work. So that has been awesome.
Hmm.
Mhm. So, as the person who does the metrics, the behind the scenes stuff, I can tell you there are lots of people listening. We're in the top 1.5% of global podcasts, which is very exciting.
Hmm.
We're listened to in over 100 countries, and just looking at it, we have over 125,000 downloads. Um,
Wow.
why do you think it's so popular?
I think it's because of the content. So, it's not a high budget podcast. And we're not, TV personalities. We're not famous. I believe in the content and I believe the content is universal. And so people connect with it because they can relate to it. And I think hopefully people find both CN and me very down to earth, and our guests are interesting and generous to share their lived experiences. And I just feel like it's so real. It's not staged. We don't practice. And so that's why I think it's popular.
Yeah, I wonder if it's popular because, well, there's a couple things that we've learned. Like some people like the podcast format because they can listen to it on their own time or, speed up our
Mhm.
voices a bit so they
Yeah.
can sort of get information, but it's just a conversation with people, like-minded individuals.
Mhm.
And I also think the heart of our movement is like empowering and and hopeful, which was a hard
Mhm.
thing for us to figure out how to do at the beginning. And as
Mhm.
we've really leaned into that, and I think there's a real need for hope in this day and
Mhm.
age of where you really feel no power in a system. So we're giving people
Mhm.
tips that they can use and simple language. I think that's the other key piece that it
Mhm.
isn't so complicated or something that's like above, out of anybody's reach. These are things that any one of us can do and just reminding us that healthcare providers are human, the system is made up and despite decisions by humans and we're human too. So I think we really can make a change if we try something different.
I think the next thing is there's a picture behind you, CN, of something that came out about a year and a half ago. We'll let Maggie
Oh,
take
the
those
book?
Ooh.
questions.
Yeah, so let's
Yeah.
shift focus now and let's talk a little bit about the book. So tell us, how did the book happen? What led up to this? What made you want to write a book?
Okay, I'm going to tell the truth this time. Okay.
Okay.
Because I feel like the story's changed a little bit, but I was very frustrated as a palliative care physician at the system. I met so many people over the years of, the beginning of my career, and I kept like scratching my head thinking like, what is wrong here? Why are people suffering so badly? And mostly because of the system and not having the information they needed, et cetera, et cetera. So I decided I was going to write an expose and I was going to tell the world that there's problems here, everyone, that the healthcare system is broken in these ways. And, you need to know this and you need to know that because you're going to fall in potholes all over the place. And I was basically going to leak my anger out on paper. Uh, and I think it's because my husband was so tired of me, chatting his ear off wherever we were about, you can't even believe what I saw today. You can't even believe I needed this for a patient and couldn't get it, or this caregiver didn't know even this. And so he said to me, yeah, why don't you write all that down? I think you'd be really good at writing things. Meanwhile, he's just trying to like brush me off. So I started writing. And, you know, CN and I, when we were on a committee together, um, realized that, he was just as frustrated as I was. And so CN knew that I wanted to write a book, and I had gotten nowhere with that. And he was thinking that the two of us could probably not only would this be therapeutic for us, but that we could probably come up with a book that was going to be so helpful for citizens of the world. And he, helped me to understand that we probably shouldn't write an angry book that's an expose because, none of it's intentional, the stuff that happens. And yeah, thank goodness for CN because he put the filter of like helpfulness instead of just, me dumping into our content. And yeah, we just started writing little essays and then linked them all together. And what else, CN?
Yeah, I mean, I think we that led us to the seven keys. And once we knew that and
Yeah.
tested that out and we knew we had to spread that, but in a way it was hard to get that message out because we weren't really well known and maybe in many ways we still aren't. So the
Mhm.
podcast was our way to sort of have a proof of concept that there was a community of people who wanted to talk about this, that were interested in talking about this. And
Yeah.
in the past, 4 years, we've seen how this topic and this death positive movement has grown and grown. And I think it's not going away. And the complexities of how we care for people who are very sick is just getting more complicated. So
Mhm.
we've always known that this is an interesting topic, but we had no evidence.
Mhm.
So I think in many ways, the book happened from the momentum of the podcast, but also I want to say recognize, the palliative care community who really embraced our messaging because these
Mhm.
are people and from Canadian Virtual Hospice, the Canadian Hospice Palliative Care Association, the provincial organizations like embraced us and invited us to talks and gave us a profile that
Mhm.
gave us confidence, I think, and also just, fuel to the fire, so to speak,
Mhm.
so that we could keep going and that this was worth pursuing. Otherwise, I think maybe we could have been happy with season one of our podcast just stopping, but that was not the case. And we have been pulled along for the ride in many ways.
Yeah,
Um, so that's what gave us
the
the
signal.
yeah, the signal to
Yeah.
trying to find agents and publishers and
Mm.
getting rejected many times, but eventually finding the right publisher and the right model for us,
Mhm.
and now it's out and it's incredible. It's been out for a
Yeah.
year and a half.
Hmm.
Who's the
So tell
publisher, you should say?
Yeah, page two.
page two.
Yeah.
It's a publisher that works with Macmillan, but they publish books from all over, and they really focus on authors like us who maybe who are experts in a certain subject but may not have the platform. So we're really grateful for their support and expertise, and they've been wonderful to work with. But also, just giving us another way to add so that people can be part of the revolution.
Hmm. So tell me, in your eyes, what do you think the successes of the book have been? I know you've done so many speaking tours and so many guest appearances, and handed it out to patients and families. So tell us, what, from your perspective, what are some of the big successes of the book?
Well, I think, for us, every time someone reaches out to us and says things like, you can't imagine how helpful your book was, or I've
Mhm.
read your book 6 times, or I've dog-eared it and highlighted it, and it's actually getting, frayed at this point. I've shared it with my friends. I bought my doctor a copy. Uh, I can't get it at the library. These are the kinds of things that, again, tell us we're on the right track. Because I suppose the risk of writing a book with this kind of content is that a year later it's not relevant anymore, or that it's not relevant outside of our country. And we have people from all other countries telling us this is the same problem in our country, and your book, we want it to be available, to
Mhm.
us and all over the place. So um, that's what I think is, you know again, keeps fueling us to think
Mhm.
of more and interesting ways to get this content out there.
And I can tell you that I definitely have a copy of the book in my car and I drive
Yeah.
around with it. And then when one of my mom friends says, "Hey, oh my gosh, my dad just got diagnosed," or "My mom is going through this," I say, "Oh, just let me go get my book from the trunk for you. Read this, let me know what you think, and then pass it on to somebody else." And I'm telling you, so many of the mom friends I have are in this situation. They've read the book. They've
Yeah.
benefited from the book and they've told a friend about the book. And I'm not just saying that, it's honestly the truth. So
Yeah.
the message is really getting out there. Are there other signals that you're getting from patients and families that the message is really working and having an impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think we get emails, as you know, and they come from our website,
Mm.
and we read those emails, of course, and we respond. And people say things like it helped us get unfrozen, and we've been trying to, share some of those on social media, and not obviously to. It's really about promoting the work and not ourselves, but like it was the most one of the it was the top 10 most popular books that was taken out of the public library in one of the towns in Ontario, which was amazing.
Mhm.
It was, along some really big books like Atomic Habits or The Body Knows the Score from that
Mhm.
Gabe Mate, who's, super famous. So we're like, wow, we're in company like that, just, for that public library. But that was cool. And someone sent a video of us of a book that they highlighted in dog-eared, and this was written and it was read by somebody, a mom, a spouse of somebody with dementia, and they were so overwhelmed, and yet somehow they felt that there were keys in there that and questions that they didn't know the answer to that they wanted to ask their doctor next. So that's what I think is the real signal, is that or clinicians that say
Mhm.
I read it and I speak differently now. I don't say hope for the best, plan for the worst anymore. I say hope for the best and plan for the rest. And it has
Mhm.
led me to new conversations. So it really is those anecdotal stories that hit home for us that help us
Mhm.
understand that it's not us. It's we just took the time to go through the thousands of stories and, write it in a way that people would be accessible and hopeful, or to
Mhm,
deconstruct what we do on a daily basis. That's more that
mhm,
and empowering others to do it. But
Mm,
that's how we know the messages. And I think we've sold 10,000 copies in our first year. We
mhm,
have our fourth print run. We're just putting another big order. It's amazing
mm,
the support we've had, and that people are spreading it. And so we're yeah, and other countries ask us to translate
mhm,
it into French and Spanish, which we don't have rights to. Like you have talked to our publisher how to do that, but it's just exciting to know that this is not a flash in the pan. It's really not
mhm,
about selling books. It's about creating a revolution so that care can be different for
mhm,
all of us
mhm,
anywhere in the world.
mhm. And
mhm,
I think the book is also relevant for those who may not have a serious illness because I made my dad read it
mhm,
and he is not sick and he's, head in the sand, carrying out day-to-day business. And he loved it. And then he told all his friends, you need to read this book so that when you
mhm,
get there, you're ready. So I
mhm,
think it's important that anyone can benefit from the information in this book.
mhm. Yeah. Didn't we once have a lawyer who deals with estates and things like that who approached us and said, this book would be really good for my clients for planning and all sorts of people. My kids, as soon as I say, something and I'm like, they say to me, okay, Mama, I know what you're going to say. We're going to walk two roads, or let's hope for the best, plan for the rest, or let's zoom out. And I tend to use the language in my personal life as well.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit addicting.
Hmm. So now that the book's been out for a year and a half, like you said, Sian, I want to know, is there anything that you would change or subtract or even add to the keys now?
Okay, she asked you, Sian. But
Oh, well,
Oh, well,
I
no,
mean,
you can answer too, Sammy.
oh,
yeah. Yeah, you
okay.
go.
Truthfully, no. And that's what makes me so proud and bewildered how we landed on these seven um, tips, keys, mindsets, whatever we want to call them. We called them keys. I I don't know how, like I do know how we did it, but I am so proud that I can honestly say that I wouldn't take away one of the keys. And at this point, I don't think I would add one or change the content much. So while you're answering, so far, I would say no. There's nothing that I wish we would have, done differently, um, in a big way.
Yeah, I think the only thing I agree. I think the only thing that we hear very often, is that patients and families say, "I wish there were more activities. I wish there was a workbook that came along with it." And so, as you know, we've been working very hard, and we have a workbook coming out just as this season is dropping. The workbook should be available on online stores. That's
Yeah.
how we could get it as quickly as possible out into the world. So it's the Hope for the Best Plan for the Rest workbook. And I think in that we have a lot of exercises. So I know it sounds like a shameless plug of our next big project, but that is just another step that the book and the workbook go together. We have a workshop in a
Mhm.
box and we have provider education to just make a whole. We realized we have to change the system as well and providers and not just activate patients and families. So I think one of the secrets or one of the things that have been to our favor was the simplicity of it and to not
Mhm.
get into the weeds because I
Mhm.
think it can get very like inside baseball, which is a term I didn't even know existed until we started trying to
Mhm.
define palliative care. And people were like, I don't understand what you're saying. And in my head, we write academic articles trying to define it. So I was like, I think this is too complicated. We have to simplify it. And I think that's what the power of the keys are. They're very simple but meaningful, and people can
Mhm.
understand it and do it. And that's what not quite a tagline, but it's really like it's an action. And I think that's what the secret of a social movement is really.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Oh, social movement. I think that we should stop there. And I'm going to throw it over to Kayla, who you may not know is the one who actually came up with the name The Waiting Room Revolution. Yay!
Y-
Yes,
So,
yes.
Yes, Caleb.
Brilliant.
How did you come up with that name? We were struggling.
Brilliant.
Well, I just, you had talked about the seven keys and like just reading your work and what you two had worked on already. And I just thought about, when you're sitting in that waiting room at the hospital, when like, as someone who has been with lots of family members and myself, relatives, you're sitting there and you're like, not sure what's going to happen. And I
Mhm.
felt the place where people could use these keys and use your
Hmm.
work the most is when they're in that state of
Hmm.
waiting for answers, because there are things you can do while you're waiting, or even when you're not sick at all. Like Maggie
Hmm.
said, like, the book, you can read it and have an idea of what you can do in the future. So that's where the waiting room revolution came from.
The
Um,
can I add to that too? It's interesting because it's so brilliant, the title, because it also highlights this huge power difference between the patient and family, just like regular citizens who might be sitting in the waiting room, and what's behind that door. And, what are they going to tell me? What am I going to have to do? How long do I have to wait? Um, you know, I'm intimidated. It's like so disempowering being in the physical and metaphorical waiting room compared to, the healthcare provider. It's very unbalanced. And so this is why I think the waiting room is such an important metaphor.
Yeah, and I'll just say we had a lot of other names like the patient and caregiver revolution. I've said that before, and a palliative care revolution, and it is those things, but all those words have, baggage with them. Nobody wants to be a patient. Nobody wants to be a caregiver, and palliative care is very misconstrued. So those weren't going to work. And I think the power of the waiting room revolution, it's that example of going at just the right level so that it's accessible to everyone and still hopeful
Mhm,
and meaningful without being
mhm,
scary. So
mhm.
thank you, Kayla.
Yes, thank you.
And the
you're
logo and
welcome.
all our graphics, which
You're
is
I
welcome.
love the
amazing. Our
logo.
color
Yeah.
scheme is all
Yeah.
Kayla.
Um, yeah, I think it encompasses a lot.
Mhm.
So just, you said it's a social movement. And I think this is a question for CN, but can you tell us, all listeners, what is a social movement?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about what a social movement is um, from Helen Bevan from the NHS in the UK, and other people have done this, and collective action, which is another uh, kind of movement where many people do small acts, and that leads to big change. So that's really the heart of it. But a social movement is really a term about an unstructured or organic group of people. It could be small, it could be large, but they're all working together towards a particular goal in many different ways. And there's lots of examples of, especially with social media, to just kind of come out and put things, and people, put objectives like Me Too or Black Lives Matter or, some of these protests that happen and things like that. And in a way, I guess we're kind of rebelling against a broken system, but people can achieve those goals in different ways and they make it their own. And that's the key. I think the heart of a social movement is actions that people can take and adapt to their own context. And I will say that's a bit different for scientists like us or academics because our goal is to put out evidence-based, the best evidence and make sure everyone follows that and not deviate. And I think this is evidence-based, but I think it still needs this implementation science piece of being able to be adapted. And so um, and I think that's what we've seen the success of this in the past 4 years, that people get the message and they can understand how it applies, and we're giving it away. I think that's the key. We're giving this information away so that they can use it in their own way without feeling the ownership that, it has to be delivered by us or framed in this way or paid for in this way. It's really like these are words, these are approaches, this is language.
Mhm.
So um, that's what really the heart of the social movement is.
Can you share some of the adaptations that people have done?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, Sammy.
Well, um, our dear friend Bunny has made it into a Tai Chi uh, exercise. She has adapted the 7 keys into different Tai Chi movements. And I think that's on our YouTube or will be soon enough.
Yeah. And
So,
that's one of the questions
yeah.
we often get is like, does your work well, we Health Canada partnered with us and they adapted our 7 keys into like a poster of 3 questions you should ask your doctor and the provider piece, which is the things you should think about when you get asked these questions.
Mhm.
And then that got adapted to Australia. if you remember
Hmm.
Sammy,
Yeah.
Tasmania Palliative Care Association really
Hmm.
wanted that poster set, so they adapted it and put, their heart logo and their, Tasmanian Australians
There
on
was an
there.
indigenous group who adapted the seven keys to be more relevant for their people.
Yeah, exactly. I
Mhm.
think it's very many of the metaphors were the same, but like Walk Two Roads was like swimming against the stream. So sometimes it's
Yeah.
fast and sometimes it's slow. So,
Yeah.
um,
Oh, and also someone made a course out of it, right? So I think the Dying with Dignity group here in Ontario actually took it and made it into a course that they
yeah,
teach public.
yeah, and lots of community educators like Shelley O'Connor and Ruth Richardson did that, and that really was what inspired us
Yeah.
to do the workbook. Really, they
Mm.
said, "Look, we're already doing this, and and so we were like, we need to, formalize that and help people be able to do that, in more communities and make it easier for them." So that's some of the adaptations, which have been just
Mhm.
incredible.
Mhm.
Really is a global social movement.
It is.
Really
Yeah,
is.
because Sian, you
Mhm.
keep saying Ontario and Canadian and whatever, but I think we should remind people that this is not just relevant for this country. We have relevance in, like we said, like many, many countries. It is not a book about the Canadian healthcare system. It is a book about being a patient, being a loved one or a caregiver of a patient, and it doesn't matter what country you live in, it is relevant for wherever you are.
Yeah, and I'll just, at risk of sounding self-congratulatory, but we've been invited to talks in the UK and Switzerland, and there were many different European countries interested. The
And
Philippines,
Portugal and the Philippines and where else, Ian?
Taiwan, Singapore, Australia, was
Yeah,
from up from the east to the west coast in Australia. So it has been,
the
um,
US.
yep, the US, you've been all
Yeah.
over. So it's been just been such it's been real fun, I would say.
Mm,
Obviously it's nice to be invited to give talks, but to meet people and communities that aren't
yeah.
necessarily palliative care conferences. These are public health palliative care,
It's
or
affirming.
yeah,
Yes.
advanced care
Mhm.
planning. There are all these like
Mhm.
adjacent topics that are related to this idea of human-centered care. So the global movement is alive and well, and
Mhm.
um we welcome, and this is why we're, this season is about understanding how we can spread this message further and how people can take this and make it their own through the workbook and our book.
I would say the podcast is alive and well. The book
Mm.
is alive and well. Um, our speaking engagements are alive and well. Our social media is alive and well. And so these are all different ways that we're trying to spread the content of this social movement. It's not about a book or a podcast. We're just blasting all over the place, to try to meet people with however they want to receive the content.
Mhm.
I mean, you talked about all the your speaking engagements, and it's so
Mm,
funny. Like when I remember there was a few that was like less than 10 people in the room, but they were really engaged 10 people. And now it's
mhm.
like hundreds and hundreds of people, which is just incredible to see. But what are some of the common questions that you get asked at these talks?
Oh, number one, are you two married? Okay, and so the answer is no. Um, well, yes, we are
For the
married.
record.
We're both married, yeah, but to our own spouses. Ann and I are not we're partners, but not that kind of partner anyway. Uh, and yeah, and the other comment we get a lot is I wish I had had this years ago. So many
Mhm.
people say that to us. Um, and people ask us all sorts of things. Like, you know, would it be okay if I gave a copy to my healthcare provider? Do you think it would be relevant for them? Um, what else do they ask, Cian?
Well, one of the ones, we get a lot is this relevant for outside of Canada, or like a, Western culture, and can it be
Mhm.
adapted to, say, a Chinese culture? I remember I got asked that in Singapore,
Mhm.
and I'm a Singaporean, or I was born in Singapore, so I was like,
Mhm.
I don't know. But over time we've tried to include people, or guests from around the world. And I really think it is. So like I can think of Dia Martina from
Mm,
Indonesia who said, we say, trust in God, but tie up your donkey, which is the same idea of hope for the best, plan for the rest. So like,
mhm,
um, uh, you still have to take action. There's still ownership and agency that you have to do. And then
mhm,
I met someone from the Philippines, Liza Manalo, who said it's a very religious country or a Catholic country in the Philippines. So she says,
mhm,
instead of hope for the best, they say pray for the best, but we need to
mm,
plan for the rest. And
mm,
so what you're praying for is to be with, to be with God, to return to God. But
mhm,
while we're still alive, here's the things what do we need to do? And
mhm,
so she said that has been very effective. And Christian Nitsamaro, who is from
mhm,
Rwanda, who talks about Ubuntu, I am because we are, which is just a call out to how this whole approach is a community-based approach.
mhm,
It isn't an
mhm,
individual thing. It's community cares for people. And
mm,
that led us to a whole, community of public health palliative care, but also compassionate communities, which are all related to this work. And they've been great supporters because they're trying to, build caring communities and neighbors and friends and what their role is. So we get
yeah.
asked that a lot of how this can be adapted to other countries. But we're like, whenever I ask what would you change and people raise their hand, I'm like, that sounds great. Now you have permission to go and do it.
Well, I think you guys at the end of every episode, you like to end with a specific question. You probably know what I'm gonna ask next, but what is something you want to share that you haven't gotten a chance to yet? It's your turn.
Oh,
You
it's
always
my
ask
turn.
your guest this, but now it's your
Yeah.
turn to answer.
Hmm.
I mean,
Hmm.
I know what I know. I think there's one thing that I want to say. I think the one thing that I never get to say at meetings, besides really saying that this is totally relevant for healthcare providers, is that we spend a lot of time doing this, but it's really not our full-time job. I mean, Sammy is balancing every single day, making home visits, which is what is her superpower, working in the communities and charting and dealing with all the systems issues. And then Kayla and Maggie work with me on academic projects and research projects. So that's our full-time job. And this waiting room revolution and book writing and podcasting is like our it's just like our hobby in a way. It's our hobby, I think.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
don't make money off the YouTube
No,
videos
it's
or our
not a hobby.
podcast. It's a
It is
passion.
yeah, we're driven
Passion
by
project.
something. It's a
Hmm.
passion project. Yeah.
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 And so I think the take home isn't that, we do this because we love it. Obviously, the book has been a way to like sort of keep this going, but the podcast, there's no ads or anything like that. Or social media, we're not doing it to be influencers. No, no, we want to keep our full-time jobs, but or that's how we have credibility and we love that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the take home is that for our listeners is if we can do it, people who are never on social media, who have known nothing
Hmm.
about podcasts, are not famous, who are in their basements with a
Hmm.
mic, they can do it too. I think that has been why this revolution has been exciting,
Hmm.
at least for us, is to see everyday people. I always say in my class, like, um, ordinary people can do extraordinary things,
Hmm.
which is, how we use innovation and stuff to make change in healthcare. So I feel like we're pretty ordinary people trying to do something extraordinary. And,
Hmm.
along with great help from Maggie, Kayla, and the whole team and everyone who supports us. But I think it really is that we've seen over and over people from communities all over the world be able to take this and spread it. And that's what we're trying to do with our workbook, our whole movement. And that's the next phase of it. And I'm really excited about that um, this isn't, sort of a thing to just have a voice or a platform. It's really to give away this so to empower communities so that it can make a change wherever they are.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. I would say, it's my turn now. Okay, so I am really thirsty to make sure that this content gets into the formal education of healthcare providers. We've talked a lot about helping, save the people that are already graduated and out there working who are probably burnt out, but nothing's ever going to change until we course correct the actual way we teach healthcare providers to practice. And so I'm hoping that, in addition to giving out the book to every single solitary learner that comes and spends time with me one by one, that we will be able to infiltrate, I'm talking revolution kind of lingo, all the different medical schools around, all the different countries, and the nursing schools and the social work schools, the physiotherapy, occupational therapy, pharmacy, chaplaincy, whoever I'm missing, the death doulas, whatever. Like in the formal training, it needs to be integrated. That's one thing I want to say. And the other thing is just that, over these years, just really appreciating the team so much that's working behind the scenes, because it really isn't just you and me, two people. There's all these important characters, Kayla and Maggie being two of a small group of maybe like five people in total. But that you and I bring such different skills to the table. And I think that that's part of the magic. I have the bedside clinical content and experience, and basically that's it. And you have everything else, the creativity and the magic and the ability to make connections with people all around the world, and how engaging you are and smart, and the research. And so I would hate to work with someone like me, and I'm so delighted to work with someone like you, I guess I would say.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, thank
Look
you.
it. I'm
Yeah,
showing
heart,
you my
heart back.
heart.
Yeah, I can't take compliments.
Heart.
That's one of my weaknesses. But the things I'm not good. But yeah, we do bring different skills, and the team, and Kayla, Maggie too, and we couldn't do it without them, and we definitely couldn't. This revolution is not the
And
same. Would
Shilpa and Sue,
Yeah, Bethany, we've had
Bethany.
Val, Daryl. So we've had some really
Yeah.
great people, and all our collaborators, everyone who listens, our ambassadors, and people we know, you know who you are, and we'll be working with you and building a global
Mhm.
community. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, the revolution is wouldn't have started without you, Sammy. And so it's the two of us. We're in it.
We're
We're
in it.
stuck. Yeah.
In it to win
Till
it.
death do us part. Till
Yeah.
death do us part.
Yeah, but
I
not
do.
not
I think we just
always.
got married. Just kidding. Thanks for listening. Visit our website, waitingroomrevolution.com, to join our newsletter, learn more about the movement, check out our free resources, and see if we're coming to a city near you. This episode was produced by Cien Siao, Maggie Sivak, Kayla McMillan, and Shilpa Joythi Kumar. Our theme music is Maypool by Ketsa.